Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. I had such a nice little thing planned as an intro because I thought England were going to win it, and here we are. But we've got a good little panel. Look at the four of us. We're gonna. Last time the four of us were together, the whole Lion King discussion and all that kind of came out. So maybe we might get a few more revelations.
Circle of life, Connor.
See, I get that reference now. I've still not seen it, but I get the reference. See how that goes. But yes, we will go through obviously all the talking points of today's final. Obviously disappointing from an England point of view. If we have any Spanish, obviously in the comments we did on the last show. Obviously, congrats. I'm sure you'll like to rub it in, which to be fair, we'd be doing if it was the other way around. Charlie will be back in a second. She has currently lost sound on her front. But Laura, I'll come to yourself first. Just your kind of and just what your feeling is at the moment, because obviously you've been on every match reaction for the Lionesses. You did the pre-tournament Lionesses show, so yeah, 100. Congrats on that one. You've made it to the end. It's not kind of how we wanted it to end, but what is your just, I guess, overall feeling right now?
Yeah, you have to see me again for a while, so it might be a blessing for some people. I think disappointment. I think it comes in like you can kind of get content with the oh, you know what, we've had a good tournament, we've done really well, and I think looking back on this tournament, maybe in a week's time, a month's time, that should be the overwhelming thing. But right now, it's kind of tough because you think back to the anticipation, the excitement pre-game, and then it's just the disappointment sinks in once more of like, oh, we could have won it. We kind of deserved it in some ways. It's frustrating. I think the whole thing with the Spanish manager just makes it that little bit worse. I can be happy for that Spain team, but it just makes it really hard to feel that was like the right outcome with the Spanish manager. So I think, you know what, the team did really well, and I think they scraped through on quite a few games, and they didn't have it in them to do that again. I'm disappointed for Sarina Wiegman because I feel like she deserves a title, a World Cup title. Yeah, I think the overwhelming feeling is disappointment, but it is hard to kind of begrudge the team or say they didn't do enough because they got to a World Cup final, which England haven't done in a very long time. So proud of the team, but disappointed.
I was going to say, you mentioned the Spanish. We were talking about this briefly backstage. The whole thing after, like in the post-celebration thing with the Spanish Federation as well. The whole thing, that situation, just a mess. Any other team, I'd be, congratulations and so on. But not this Spanish side. They don't, aside from the players and Honor in particular. But the rest of them, no, they don't deserve a single plaudit that comes their way. Barry, for yourself, what's your kind of, Charlie is back, what's your kind of overarching, I guess, emotion? Mia saying now, obviously, simply heartbroken. I mean, you met some United players today. You should be happy. I'll be buzzing with that regardless of the result. But Barry, for yourself, what's your kind of overarching feeling right now?
Well, Barry's bucket is full because Barry expects them to be out of the quarterfinals. So this is the beauty about always under-believing. You do hit a point where you're like, well, actually, we've done really well. I think Laura's nailed it really with what she said, that there is a lot to be proud of. The fact that they've made it to the final, 2 successive finals in 2 major tournaments as well. I think they have captured the mood of the nation again. They've got so much inspiration that they've managed to get out there, more so than I think even when we had the Euros on our doorstep. The fact that you've got people watching football at like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, which, let's be honest, has been a god-awful time to have to be watching the football, but we've all got used to it. And I think in that respect, it's been amazing. So really, really pleased for in that way. I do have grumbles about the match, as you well know, and I think the disappointing thing is because it was so close. I think if we go out there and we get tonked 4 or 5-0, you just sort of accept that Spain were the better side. I don't accept that Spain were the better side, and I think they were there to be beaten today, unfortunately. And so as a result, I'm a little bit distressed and upset in that respect because I don't feel like the girls were able to give the account of themselves as a whole that they would have wanted to give of themselves. But I think the overriding thing has to be just how brilliant they've been. And, I've watched a few things since then. I'm talking about the team as a whole, not just Serena Wiegman, not just the players, not just the substitutes who did excellent jobs of warming the bench. I'm thinking about people like the media team. You think about some of the stuff that they throw out there that helps us to really get to know these players and to like them. And it's so true. They are a likable squad, but they're likable as well just through what you watch. When you see them trying to roll a penny in between a fork, or when you see them try. Seriously, this is what gets people to know and love people beyond just what they do on a football pitch. And so for that reason, I think that's where the disappointment and the upset comes from, because you end up really caring for these players and understanding their personality, much in the way we do at United when we look at what Millie Turner posts on all of her stuff. And it just makes you giggle because it makes you feel like part of the team. So, yeah, we've all lost today, which is quite sad, but we've also all won, which is really quite amazing.
Yeah, we'll come back to in terms of what this will mean moving forward. Because Mia's comment there talking about hoping the WSL doesn't fall, because we saw the impact post Euros obviously winning it. It'll be interesting now to see what the impact is after obviously a final loss. So we'll come back to all of that in a second. But Charlie, for yourself, I hope you can hear us. I'm assuming you can because you're nodding your head now, so you can do what you're. Obviously, this is a little bit different to the World Cup one, to the Euros one we did last year. Obviously, we've had a bit of time to digest this. Obviously, with it not being almost instant, but what's your emotions, I guess, around the game?
Immediately at full time, it was devastated, really. I think in the build up to the tournament, it had been really disrupted for them, hadn't it, with all the injuries and then things that happened in the tournament that meant they had to adapt really, really quickly, and it felt like a bit of against all odds. And we were talking about, if they get to the quarterfinals, that's good going, but then they seem to be building into the tournament, and then obviously expectations change. We saw that with our lady ballers, didn't we, last year? Expectations change as you get closer to the trophy or the final of something. So really, really gutted. But I went out for it, went for a bit of a run, and then tried to sort of work out in my head how I felt about it. But just in hindsight, just really proud of what they've achieved. I think the impact they've had on women's football just across the board has been even more impressive this time around, because like I said, it's halfway across the world and it has gripped the nation. You talk about a full box park at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, like that shouldn't be happening. It has never happened for women's football, so I'm really pleased about that, and I hope that when they get to digest it, they realise actually what they've achieved has been phenomenal, because it has been difficult for them. And they've done what a Serena Wiegman side seems to do, which is just knuckle down, batten down the hatches and just get on with it. And it was close in the end. It wasn't like they turned up to the final and they were rolled over. Spain ended up being the better side, but England did a bloody good showing of themselves. I know we're going to talk about some players in particular, but it was, devastation at first, but now just really pleased that they achieved what they did in spite of the circumstances that they were in.
Certainly is. I'm going to kind of miss watching football that early in the morning. It's giving me something to watch while I'm kind of working, TV on in the background, and can watch those games as it kind of goes on. I'm kind of going to miss that. But you make good points there in terms of talking about the impact off the field as well. I think it certainly has. I've got people that that do, to be honest, don't care about football full stop, that have now messaged after the quarterfinal, I'm now interested in football again. So things like that. It's great to see as well. But we'll come back to all of that once we've got all the negatives of the game out of the way, because we've obviously, that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about the game. Let's just start with the Spain goal then. So Laura, I'll come to yourself first. I actually flicked onto your commentary that you were doing earlier when you were going through this one. Didn't sound, you obviously trying to stay pretty neutral, but it's hard to hide your emotions, I'm sure, when you're doing these things. But the Spanish goal, obviously, we saw how it kind of developed. Lucy Bronze going into I don't know where she was kind of going. Right idea, probably should have released the ball a bit earlier, but we saw how that developed. How did you kind of see that from an England point of view? Because even though Lucy Bronze is the one that loses the ball, a lot of blame was obviously put on her. There's still a couple of phases of play after that to stop that ball, unless you think any differently to me. What was your kind of thoughts on that one?
No, I agree. I think it could have been prevented at quite a few stages of where that was going. Obviously, the Bronze thing was just like basics of like, don't take the ball into contact in dangerous areas, and she did just that. But then she was still at the halfway line when that happened, and we let them break far too easily. That crossfield pass, not really not really stop when it got into Caldente. I don't think she was particularly closed down at all. I think that was consistent throughout the match. I don't think we were closing down enough at all in those dangerous positions. And there were so many times throughout where Spain were just allowed time and space. And luckily, they didn't really take too much advantage of it. But I think that was something that we struggled with in defence today. We were more making blocks than closing down a lot in defence. And then, yeah, I mean, it was a good goal. It was a good strike, obviously, very well hit and good accuracy. But I do think from a defensive point of view, it just wasn't. It wasn't England's best showing, and I think it was something that happened throughout that match, and we were more lucky that it didn't happen more often, rather than kind of that was a blip where we kind of switched off a little bit. It was like that was consistent throughout the match where we were making those kind of errors and not closing down in those areas. And we even throughout the tournament, it's not just bronze that has lost the ball in those areas as well. So I think it's kind of an issue with this England team that has happened consistently. But yeah, I think definitely more that could have been done to prevent that goal.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, for yourself and Charlie, you follow in straight away on this one in terms of the goal itself. As you know, Laura points out there, you know, the ball wasn't closed down. Yes, it's bronze that loses the ball, but there's still a crossfield pass that could be intercepted. There's still 20, 30 yards to run where Carter and Bright are just backing off. And then obviously we saw what happened with the shot. But yeah, how did you kind of see the Spanish goal from an England point of view?
Well, I mean, it was the beginning of the end, that really, wasn't it? Which was a shame. I'm not entirely sure what Kira Walsh was doing in the middle of the pitch where she was anyway, when there were other players around that could have had it. And I can't work out why she carried on running. It's the equivalent of walking down an alley with a gang of hooded youths and deciding to continue along that alley and not maybe just take the long way around. And that's exactly what happened. Because she was mugged with the ball and out of position. And that was the beginning of, you know, we all make mistakes, as has been said, and that's exactly what happened there. The disappointing thing for me is that there was nobody to cover. And I think that was the key problem. There was nobody there. And then Carmona, who scored in the end, she starts her run from her own half effectively, sprinting past Leslie Russo, who only then realises that actually there's no Georgia Stanway coming back to help here, and the other defenders are also otherwise engaged. So Russo has to do the run back. And to be fair, she absolutely busts a gut trying to get there, but Carmona's faster. And when that happens, there's only one outcome. As I've said to you throughout the day, Connor, the difference today was we came up against a side who were much more likely to take advantage of our defensive frailties that were highlighted at the beginning of the tournament. And I think that's what happened today. I think today the defence, although performing admirably as they have done throughout the tournament and giving their best, it was shown up a little bit today because, again, without the likes of Mary Earps, we could have been looking at maybe 3 or 4 goals scored against us. So equally, we could have had 3 or 4 goals as well, but that's a separate question and a separate point. So I think it's a tricky one. Ultimately, Walsh has to do better in the middle of the park. You can't just submit possession willy-nilly to a side like Spain who are already having a whole load of possession. So we just needed to think more about where we were doing the block. And I think what was disappointing for me was actually what happened after the goal, because we then stood off them. And whereas we were doing all of that high press and winning the ball up high and therefore creating chances, we created maybe one chance then for the rest of the half before we made the tactical change at half time. So, you know, yes, it was disappointing. Yes, there are other players that could have done better. Millie Bright, if she'd have had an inch more pace about her, might have been able to get in between and block the shot when it was taken. But if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. So, you know, we can't worry about those sort of things. We just have to accept the fact that, you know, it happened. It was a brilliant finish. There was only one place she could put that. Once again, it's like, if you want to beat Mary Earps, you've got to be accurate. And Mary, again, if she'd have taken a step forward, ironically, would have narrowed it to such a point that she'd have got her fingers to it and probably turned it around the post. So it's like literally one little spot that she could have put it into, and she did. And so you have to doff your cap to her for that one. But yeah, it was overall not a great goal to concede.
No, it just felt the attack that Bronze tried to instigate felt a little bit disjointed as well, because you can see that she's cutting inside and she's motioning, I think, wanting Ella Toon to make a run into space, which Ella isn't anticipating or ready for, is not expecting to be the thing that she wants to happen. So it just looked a bit disjointed at that point. And then obviously they win the ball back. But we talk about, I think, Laura, you were saying how like Barry might as well like them standing off. So when Spain are approaching the 18-yard box, they're just standing off. And they did it against Australia, and Sam Kerr scored. And they didn't maybe close down as well as they should have done against Colombia, even though that was a bit of a freak goal. Rachel Daly didn't close down. So that's been sort of a thing across the tournament. But when they weren't closing down, I remember turning to Pete and going, but they were like, at the start of the game, Millie Bright and Jess Carter at times were pretty much at the Spain 18-yard box, pressing Spain. So it was like, you're pressing there, which is fine, go for it, because it was working quite well. They're winning the ball back. I think it's what maybe led to Lauren Hemp having the chances that she had. But then just standing off when they're approaching your 18-yard box, it just seemed like a real disconnect there. Like, and obviously, if your centre-backs are pressing that high up, that's a decision you decided tactically that's what you're going to do. But then to step off when they're in your own half, I don't know. It just seemed a bit strange, a bit of a strange approach. Because if you don't win the press that high up, you're out of position again. Your centre-backs are like 50, 60 yards out of position. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but at the time I just said to Pete, they're stepping off and they're pressing when the centre-backs have got the ball. I don't get it. But they got to the final, didn't they? So something was clicking right. But it just, again, looked like an odd thing to me. And I wish I had like the coaching badges and stuff, so I really understood why those two things were happening, because they didn't make sense to me for them both to be happening as a tactic in the same game. I don't know if anyone else noticed that.
It's a weird thing, because your fullbacks coming inside the way that Bronze did is not a bad thing. However, you mentioned the midfield there. When Bronze loses the ball in the midfield, I think I've just watched it back, Charlie. You are right. She's pointing to Toon to run, and Toon is just standing there, just like going, pass me the ball, like pass it, and Bronze keeps going, move.
But I think Tooney wants it sooner. Tooney wants her to make the sideways pass sooner so she can go into space.
There's clearly a disagreement.
Bronze has got to put the ball back. She's got a whole wall of blue behind her that she can knock back. So at that point, you give the ball back and recycle. And more importantly, Connor, as anyone, you don't have to have your coaching badges to know this one. If somebody leaves their position, someone's got to cover. So where was the communication there? Who's covering? Nobody. And if it was meant to be Leslie Russo, she'd just give herself half a yard so she wasn't absolutely roasted for pace by the left back.
That was the point I was just about to. So watching it back, so Stanway and Walsh are just in front of the back three. One of those two have got dropped to right. Now it's still a 3-on-3. So England aren't in an awful position, but as you said, the goal scorer, the overlap. Russo's not beating enough at pace. Stanway and Walsh are just watching, going, "Oh, we're all right here. Oh God, actually no, there's a player there." And by that point, it's in the back of your net, so you're kind of looking around. So it's that kind of lack of cohesive stuff. Something we spoke about on every show. That lack of cohesiveness. Like I said, Bronze going into midfield. I know she got a lot of stick for it, and she probably shouldn't lose the ball. But these things happen. I'm more looking at the midfield. Why someone then didn't cover where the space she'd left. Because it's not like she lost the ball straight away. She's ran a good 20, 30 yards. She's got
more experience in that corner. This isn't someone like Lauren James. This isn't someone who hasn't had that experience. She should know better than to run into a jungle of about 5 people. And what did she think she was going to do? She's not Hermione Granger. She's not going to just like, oh, where's the ball gone? Hey, look, we're through. It's like there was only one thing that was going to happen there. And to be fair to her, she probably did feel like there was a lot of people behind her that were going to, stop anything from happening, but it just didn't. And listen, arguably they scored their hardest chance because Redondo at the near post, how she didn't have a shot that went in
just before.
It was a great save from her, but if that was near post, she's not saving that.
There wasn't another one as well near the end.
At the end as well. Say that again.
I think it was the one you just said just before half time. Mary made a brilliant save.
But we had our chances as well, Connor. Lauren Hemp had a few chances. The one where she hit the bar beforehand, an inch lower, and we're celebrating going 1-0 up, and that would have been an entirely different game to talk about. Ella Toon we can just scrub off because she would have been offside if she had put it in. So in a way, I'm more pleased that she didn't, because I'd have probably cheered and then got myself all upset like I did do at the end. But it was a quality finish. But yeah, Walsh. Sorry, not Walsh. We'll get to her. Bronze should know better.
No, I agree. I just don't think she's the only fault in the chain, is the point I was trying to make. She's definitely not devoid of, but I think, I can't remember who I messaged, but saying that was probably one of Bronze's worst games in an England shirt for me. Not a great time to choose to do that. Obviously, I don't think it was by choice, but I think you could tell just by her reaction at the end. She knows, that she's had a poor game.
Did you see, I also wonder though, for her, like the end of the semi-final, you could see what a big deal this was for her. Like, this is, like, her career has been building for this moment.
It's the only thing she hasn't won, isn't it?
Yeah, and winning the World Cup with England. And in the tunnel at the start of the game, she looked amped up. Like, not Joe Hart levels of amped up, if you remember that one. He's headbutting the tunnel. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. But she just looked amped up. And you just wonder as well if she just... It might have been a bit much. The thing that you've always wanted, it's there. And that's all she... I don't know. You don't know, but I just wonder as well. We know that the emotional side of things can take over.
Still bronze, not silver.
Didn't normally do, maybe. Don't know.
I see what Barry's trying to do there. But I think it's a fair point. I think it probably is. Obviously, it is pretty much the only thing. And the thing she always speaks about in interviews as well. When you listen to her, when she's talking about, she wants it. So you hear of players in the past, in other sports as well, that put the pressure on themselves to win that one thing. And then, obviously, as we know with the World Cup, you get that one chance every 4 years. And for Bronze, this probably is her last chance with players coming through. And obviously, with the World Cup in 4 years, she's not getting any younger. So I'd be surprised. She might be in and around the squad maybe in 4 years' time, but I can't see it.
It'll be interesting to see what happens because it's a 2-year cycle now, isn't it, until the Euros? And I do wonder how similar the starting 11 will look. You don't know, do you? There's a lot of talent coming through. I don't know.
It's going to be Letitia at right back. There we go. That's what we're going to get our wish because Serena sees her as a right back. So, Serena, stick to your words. We'll see. We'll see Letitia at right back. I'll kind of move on to the halftime subs then because it's something Serena, to be fair, surprised me. Made the changes just pretty quick. Obviously, at halftime, I didn't expect 2 players to go off at halftime and the system changed. Laura, for yourself, what did you make on the sub? I can't remember. Obviously, I remember who went off. I can't remember who came on. Kelly and James came on.
Russo.
So, I mean, Laura, for yourself, were you surprised at those changes? Happy, obviously, because it's a complete system change for half-time in the game. Not going to lie, it surprised me it was a little bit early than what I thought it was going to be. Were you happy with that? Do you think it was the right decision? Where do you stand on that one?
Yeah, I was a bit shocked. I didn't think the players that came off were necessarily the right players to come off in that match. So yeah, I was expecting. I saw James warming up, and I just assumed it would be a straight James for Toon swap, as has been the case kind of in the tournament with those two. And then obviously, yeah, a complete system change. I don't know whether. I mean, I feel weird questioning the nous of Serena, but I think I don't know whether I'd have. It's hard, isn't it? Because you've got to implement that change sooner rather than later if you're going to make that change to make the impact and to kind of get settled in it. But I think we'd lost our energy at the end of the second half. But I don't think we'd necessarily been completely overrun in that formation. I wasn't going, oh my God, this just isn't working. I was just going, we've dropped off. So I was expecting a re-energized England in the same formation in the second half, and obviously we got a completely different setup. I don't think it didn't work, but yeah, the players that changed I thought were strange. I'd have kept Daly because she was a really good attacking, always is, a really good attacking threat, even if she's playing at left back. Maybe Serena was like, don't want the kind of overrun that obviously she experienced against Spain. I guess if you move it to left back, she's in a more defensive position. So you're leaving, if she's not a proper defender, you're leaving her a bit more exposed. But then move her up front. Like, why did you not move Daly further forward in that role? Why don't you give her that shot? Because I thought she's looked dangerous throughout the tournament when she's got forward. And you're bringing on completely new players. I thought James has operated better from a number 10 role throughout the tournament and not on the wing. So I don't know why you just stick her out on the right or the left when she's clearly most effective from the number 10 role. I thought the personnel changes were weird. I don't think I necessarily disagree or agree with the formation or the system change. If Serena wants to make something different and thinks that will work better against Spain, by all means, I was happy to see her make a change because it's something that she hasn't necessarily done early enough in other matches. But yeah, I did think the personnel changes were very strange. I didn't think Russo was having a particularly bad game. I didn't think Daly was having a particularly bad game. And I just thought it wasn't necessarily the right players to take off. I don't know who the right players would have been, but I don't think there was like anything fundamental about it that needed changing. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a bit like it did look strange. Like we need a goal, and we've taken the two recognised strikers off, and then Barry likes to talk about square pegs round holes. It seemed to then create a bit of a knock-on effect with regards to that, or almost like just trying to get players like James on and keep Toon on because they can create a little bit of magic at some point, and just kind of perhaps hoping that that's what's going to happen. But yeah, but again, though, when that change happened, it didn't have a massively detrimental effect on their performance. At times, they looked like they could make something happen, but it was just too. I think the issue was we just didn't retain the ball and keep the ball well enough. We were just desperate to get it forward as quickly as possible, in spite of whether the actual right pass was on or the opportunity was being created. It just seemed a little bit scattergun, and the players at times were overcome with the task. They just needed to calm down a little bit. Like they're winners. That team are winners. They didn't need to panic early on, and it just felt like there were elements of panic and weren't quite sure what was then happening.
I mean, I think clearly what happened was that we've spoken about how in the first half the defence wasn't quite as solid as it could have been, and what she seems to have done there is to have gone from the 3-4-3 formation to a more of a 4-3-3 formation. So she's gone the flat back four effectively, because Alex Greenwood was shifted out onto the left for the most part. There was a text earlier on put up about how they thought it was a shame that Alex Greenwood wasn't recognised, and I would imagine that's because she finished the game looking more like Terry Butcher than Alex Greenwood, because she just absolutely would not give up, bless her. I just think, I mean, again, we say it's hindsight, it's a beautiful thing, but they were just poor substitutions. I did not have a problem with the change as such, but I just find it immense. You hear the commentators halfway through the second half going, there's no focal point, we don't have a recognised striker on there. And that's because we've just taken two recognised strikers off. And I'll say it because I've said it a million times on this show, one of those recognised strikers was playing left wing back, and she broke records in the WSL for the goals that she scored last season. And if I'm honest, I think it's really disrespectful that she's not even been given a chance up front, and that she's been taken off. And basically what we've done is Lauren Hemp, who has traditionally, just like Lauren James, been better in a different position. Hemp's better coming in from the left rather than putting her out on the left and even putting James up front, which would have been a slightly different way of doing it. They put Lauren James out on the left, and Lauren Hemp instead had to continue being this makeshift striker that she's just not. She scored 2 goals in this competition. One was an absolute screamer. The other one I could have scored because it just squirmed out from under the goalkeeper. All she had to do was be there. So I don't buy into that she'd done that great in general. For what it's worth, I think she was one of the best players today, 100%. But hit the bar, a couple of shots that didn't quite go where they could have gone. And I believe that if Rachel Daly had been in that position, there was a shot in the second half that came to the far post that Hemp had that ended up going over. And I genuinely think Rachel Daly would have absolutely led that into the back of the net, because that's what she's done for Aston Villa. Now, I will never be proven right on that. That's just kind of how I feel. I thought it was really bad to take Russo off. I think she only needs 1 or 2 chances a game, and she's more likely to score than not. I think even she's got a better chance of scoring that than perhaps Lauren Hemp would have. She might have used her head. So I didn't think it was a great decision. I'm really annoyed that Rachel Daly's being, in my opinion, disrespected. And I really think it is, to just constantly keep shifting someone out to left back. She was I'll reiterate, the best goal scorer in the WSL. and she's been shifted for someone who's not been the best best goal scorer in the WSL in their career. And then they brought on Chloe Kelly, who I love, but has scored 5 goals in the WSL last season. So we need goals, and we've just hamstrung ourselves for reasons that I can't explain, Connor. It makes absolutely no sense. So the formation change did have a bit of a difference and was a good idea. I think, ironically, the changes of personnel were maybe a bit too early. And actually, had we stopped and thought about that a little bit more, we could have just stuck Rachel Daly up front quite easily. We still could have had the Lauren James change, but maybe for Ella Toon, who wasn't really in the game, was quite ineffective. I think Charlie would like me to use rather than not effective. She was ineffective for most of the game. And I think that maybe would have been better. Again, hindsight's a beautiful thing, but it just didn't work. And whilst, like I say, I appreciate the idea, but I am genuinely annoyed at what's happening with Rachel Daly, because it's there's no other word for it. It's disrespectful to expect the top goal scorer to just be left wing and nobody say anything about it. And I tell you now, we're on a United channel. If Mark Skinner did that, there'd be a certain section of the fan base that would be going absolutely ballistic.
It's also interesting from a Daly point of view. She's not getting any younger either. She's obviously the same age as Lucy Bronze. So when you talk about the next World Cup, Daly probably doesn't make that next World Cup squad. So
none of us are getting any younger. Just need to make that. That's the key for everyone.
From a pre-tournament point of view, I understood it. Serena's looking to the future and so on, but I don't understand it when you need a goal mid-tournament in a World Cup final. I understand the argument of. I understand the system change. I think that made sense. I think it made sense to everybody. We were getting absolutely torn apart out wide, so to go to a back four and bring your midfielders closer in, I got that. However, I agree. I don't think it was the right. I know we like to take the mickey a little bit, obviously, when it comes to Russo, but again, I don't think Russo was horrendous. Her touch was a bit off today. But when you're taking off her and Daly, if you're going to do that, bring Beth England on for me. Stick Beth England up top. At least she can find a goal, and she is a good finisher when she gets the chances. But when you're looking at the whole team and what needed changing, that midfield is the thing that needed changing. Tooney, Stanway, or Walsh, one of them for me has got to be coming off. And I think Barry, you just said it. James is coming on. No, sorry, Laura, you said it as well. James is coming on. I expect that fully to be a like for Toon, because that's what we've seen, and it wasn't. And Tooney stayed on until I think it was like the 88th minute or something like that when Beth England came on. It's like, that's the baffling thing for me. No issue with the system change, but the personnel was a bit like, I don't know, like it certainly baffled me, especially when you need a goal. Shouldn't have read that, but yeah. What's going on?
It wasn't me this time. Just going to say here on this one, Galton did play left back a couple of times, but it's an entirely different situation. Number one, Galton's never been the top goal scorer in WSL, and number two, that was because we didn't have another left back. Let me just count. Alex Greenwood, recognised left back, can play there. Jess Carter, recognised left back, but let's not worry. We're going to shove her into centre back anyway, which just proves you can take someone who is a fullback, Maya Letitia, and put them in a centre-back position in the World Cup final. So, this is what I mean. Listen, Serena Wiegman has done amazing things for England, and she should be getting a damehood or whatever the top honour is going to be for a lady in this country. 100%. She should be getting that. But equally, there's points which need to be questioned. And for me, that's an incredibly questionable decision and take from Wiegman.
I mean, Laura, throw it back to yourself, because obviously it kind of ties into the whole midfield conversation. There's obviously a lot of talk about Toon, about Stanway, and, well, funnily enough, not about Stanway and Walsh, which I'm finding a little bit frustrating, to be honest, as a United with my United hat on, that Toon is getting all of the criticism, and Stanway and Walsh are putting in on their day. I will happily admit Stanway and Walsh are two of the best players in Europe, but they've not been in this tournament yet. Seem to be evading criticism for whatever reason. We don't know whether Walsh is still carrying a little knot, obviously with the injury that she got, who knows. However, are you a little bit surprised that maybe we didn't see any changes in that midfield? Because we've got Katie Zellum there, obviously you've mentioned Jordan Nobbs on a previous show, Lauren James has played in that position that Tooney has. That's the area we didn't see any changes. And I think someone made the point earlier on that Spain just dominated. We knew Spain were going to dominate the ball, but England just could not keep it at all, and a big part of that is because of the midfield.
Yeah, we definitely lost that battle in the midfield, so it makes sense that you'd make a substitution there. I think Stanway and Walsh have got this aura almost around them in the England squad that you don't change them, and it's almost like who would dare suggest that those two would get changed. And I think I think they've got the experience. Obviously, they've proven themselves in tournament competitions. You've seen them in the Euros, and they were standout performers throughout that. And I think they've almost become untouchable. I don't think they're as trusted people who have been allowed to perform in that role. I think that's one of the issues, is that we've not, like, even the calls for who's coming on is always Katie Zellem, which is not necessarily the wrong thing. I think that would be the obvious thing to do. But Serena Wiegmann hasn't actually, even in other matches, hasn't played anyone else in those roles. So when it comes to a tournament, a World Cup final, you're looking for options off the bench and you're going, well, I don't really trust those people because I've not seen them play there. I've not seen them work with this team. And obviously we saw Zellem do a really good job in that group stage. So yeah, exactly. Why don't you bring her on and make that change? Because we were losing that midfield battle. But equally, we've not seen Jordan Nobbs in this team, really. She barely got any minutes even in the friendlies. Like, we don't trust them. No one thinks to make those substitutions because they haven't been tested. And you don't want to make untested substitutions in a World Cup final. And it's not been seen before. So I think it's almost like that planning aspect of it, of like, yeah, of course you want to get the team that's going to play as much as they can. But there is a kind of, you do need squad depth, and squad depth doesn't just come from having those players in the squad. It comes from having played them before and having got used to them and the team and learned to trust them. And Serena Wiegmann almost picks the players she trusts, and that's the players she trusts. She doesn't kind of go, I've got a squad of players that I need to be able to trust every single one of them. I'm sure she'd say differently, but it's just how it comes across.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, for yourself, what did you make on the kind of midfield? Obviously, a lot of talk about Tuna, but as we mentioned, Stanway and Walsh again. I was just looking at Stanway. I can't remember which one it was I've just looked at. Stanway's passing accuracy is below 70%. Walsh's is pretty high, but she didn't have that as near as many passes as the other two. Why did we maybe not see a midfield change there? Do you think it is like what Laura said? We've not seen it pre-tournament, so you're not going to test it out in a World Cup final.
I think if we look at the tournament as a whole, I think probably the midfield is where we've been most lacking on a game-by-game basis. Apart from probably the China game, interesting that. I think they haven't protected the back line well enough when the back line are having to play in a makeshift formation that they've not played in since Serena Wiegmann came in, and they've not created the chances that need to be created for the forwards. Just ignore them, Laura. We'll carry on. That need to be created for the forwards. I just don't think they've done their job well enough. And do you know what? I'm kind of one of those people who, I get the whole thing of you're in a final, don't make changes, blah, 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 blah. But it's a final. Like, I'd rather she tried something and we'd lost 4-0. If you lose 1-0, you lose 4-0. Like, just do something. They were turning us over in midfield. Don't take either of them off, but put another one on. Go back to your 4-4-2, but just put an extra midfielder on. Like, put Katie Zellem in there. And move Stanway further up if you want to. It's just, and this isn't like I've watched Zellem week in, week out, and she has been a linchpin for us. She's like been the quarterback all season, incredible. And all those forward passes we were trying to make to no one, into no space, she's the player on the bench that will get those in the right position. So I'm kind of reminded of it's a final. We're losing 1-0. There's 30 minutes of injury time. Lose 4-0. Just do something. Just get someone on there. Might get a free kick. We got some corners. The deliveries were terrible. For the corners near the end. Straight at the keeper or miles away. Just put her on. I would like a new rule in football. You know, like in handball when there's a penalty and you can just sub on a random goalkeeper who specialises in penalty saving. I want that in the football for free kicks. And then they could just keep subbing Katie Zellem on for that. But yeah, I don't get it. I think Laura's right. It's almost like they're untouchable now. Like they're almost the only two that are. But yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I don't know. Again, it'll be interesting because those two have still got a lot of years left in them. They're both mid-20s maximum. So you can imagine that's not going to change much. It'll be interesting to see if anyone else can muscle their way in. Because at the moment it's looking like Zellem's probably the only one that can. Because Jordan Nobbs is obviously nearing the end of her career, isn't she? But yeah, disappointing. I just wanted something to happen in the middle. Just do something. Are you all right now, Connor?
Sorry, I didn't know whether Barry was going to jump in.
I was just waiting. I didn't know if you wanted to ask me a question.
Just very quickly before you do. Obviously, welcome back to Channel Answer. I appreciate it. And you did say Spain a different grade. We'll get back to that in a second. But Barry, anything?
Comment that got me.
Which one?
The next one, because I know you didn't mean it, but I'm sure he meant gripping until the end. But gritting, I just had visions of like the Spain defence just gritting the icy grass that we were getting nowhere near.
Might mean gritting his teeth, like, you know, gritting your teeth, where you're like,
yeah, that's what set me off. I just had visions of the Spain players gritting the grass. It was game over. Oh,
was that what you were laughing at? I wasn't laughing at that.
That was what I was laughing at. Don't get me wrong, Stacey needs to calm down as well. She's getting a little bit angry there in the comments, but that was different gravy. I love that answer. Brilliant. And yes, well done. What's not well done though is the midfield. Because Kira Walsh was, I'll say it again, ineffective, because that appears to be the word of the day. She just wasn't. She wasn't getting there. She wasn't doing the stuff she usually does. I think I'd probably say the same for the most part for Lucy Bronze as well, and Georgia Stanway. Just a little interesting thing. We've got Nobbs and Zellum, obviously, who could have played. But if I'm right, and I could very much accept the fact that I might be wrong, we've used Bethany England for about 15 minutes for the entirety of a tournament, because she only gets given about 2 minutes at the end in the hope that she's somehow going to score a wonder goal. Obviously, we've used Lauren James, who's been used as a substitute and a starter. We've used Chloe Kelly, and Katie Zellum was given a match, which was rather gracious, of our Lord and Master, and Laura Coombs. So that's 5 substitutes that we've used. I don't think we've seen Morgan, Hampton, Robinson, Wibben-Moy, Roebuck. Did we see Charles? I think Charles might have come on, didn't she? Yes. So that's 5 players that haven't been used, haven't been touched, didn't even look close to it. I mean, I'm not even convinced they warmed up on it. I'm fairly certain their entire job was to just sit there and enjoy the show. They were effectively allowed to watch the World Cup for free. That was basically their job, and they could occasionally take part in training as well. I don't understand that, because when you are a club like ours, where you had so much wealth of choice, who are these people that we're relying on? I know we've had a lot of injuries. I know we had a few problems, but the fact that Jordan Nobbs, who, would have been the 6th person, she hasn't seen the light of day either. And she's probably one of the most experienced midfielders you're ever going to find, more so even than Katie Zellum. And yet neither of them, you can't tell me, I mean, I know in an international sense you're probably right, but you can't tell me that Jordan Nobbs isn't going to have the experience to play internationally and perhaps change a game. So I find it, again, these are the little things that I question about what's going on. The preparation for the Euros is entirely different to the preparation for this World Cup. And I know that these preparations were blighted, but they were blighted by injuries to people up front and people in the defence. The midfield wasn't really touched. That midfield is a European Championship winning midfield. And, well, all 3 of them just didn't really turn up. And that didn't help, because I wonder if there was a mention about how we then ended up playing hoofball towards the end. We weren't as composed as we normally were, and maybe this was why. Maybe this is why we were trying to go direct and get it up there, because the defence were just had enough of the fact that they'd give it to the midfield and it was just coming straight back up at them. But the irony was, because we didn't have any recognised strikers or anyone who could hold the ball up front, it didn't matter where they kicked it, it was coming back. So the poor defence really didn't. It was a bit like playing with one of those bat and balls where the ball's attached by the elastic. It didn't matter how hard you hit it, it was just going to keep coming back. And somebody needed to cut the elastic band. And to do that, you would have needed to bring on Katie Zellum and Jordan Nobbs. And as we're on a United channel, same thing. Katie Zellum would have been perfect for playing for set pieces, which we did, delivery, that sort of thing. I'm with Charlie. It'd be amazing if you could bring on a special teams every time we had a free kick or something like that.
Yeah. Isn't I'm sure there's some stats somewhere that came out in the season that, like, isn't Katie Zellum one of the most press resistant midfielders as well? One of the most press resistant, and also the best at regaining possession. I don't know. That's just throwing that out there. Yeah, Zelly.
In the WSL, and this is my point. People, listen, even if you were to talk to Katie Zellum, she would probably say that Kira Walsh is a higher rated player than herself, but that's only going to last for so long. And just because you are an absolute giant of football doesn't mean you should be in a position where you are unable to ever be taken off. And yeah, I think really that there was nothing to lose from that respect. We were already being overwhelmed. To make the change would have made, and why not give them a chance in a World Cup final? Think about them in their careers and just their ability to have a chance as well, rather than just having to sit there and watch. Instead, the substitutions that we made just weren't really effective, and like I say, just a very ineffective performance, all told.
It certainly is. It's definitely not a fear maybe, but I think Laura, you hit it. That we did. It's not something that you necessarily try in a final, and because Serena trusts those three in particular, obviously with Kirby out as well, it's very evident that she doesn't want to budge from those three. But as I've said on numerous times, Walsh on her day is one of the best midfielders in the world. No one's doubting that, but she hasn't been. That's the point, and you've got to play with the team that is on form and the players that are on form at the time. And I think that's my issue. Not questioning Stanway and Walsh's ability. Like I said, on their day, they are both unbelievable footballers. But it's not on their day. They've not been on their day this whole tournament. They've had moments in games, but they've just not been there for me. So I'm amazed that we've not seen more of Zellum or Nobbs. So it's not just from a United point of view. I'm surprised we've not seen Jordan Nobbs more either.
The only game where we looked like scoring properly, China. And who was that midfielder?
Exactly. Let's go in there. As Stu said, now the midfield we're not supplying the forward, and this is my thing when me and Charlie were talking about this backstage. When obviously there was a lot of talk about Daly would be better off at front and so on, and 100% she would. However, we don't create enough anyway. The forwards themselves are living off next to nothing because the midfield is not creating enough, aside from the China game, as Barry just mentioned, to actually put away those chances anyway. You've got to be almost 1 for 1 or 1 for 2 in your goals to shots ratio from a forward in this England side in the tournament, because we do not create that many chances or haven't done. So pretty poor from that point of view. And so I think it hit the nail on the head. Spain has a recognised player, yes, in midfield. That Spanish midfield is a joke. Unbelievably good. And I think I said to somebody, we might have been Charlie actually beforehand, when you're bringing on Pateas towards the end of the game, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, in terms of how much quality you've got on the bench as well. So yeah, fair play to him. Here's what it is. Just very quickly then, we'll go around the house on this one. Laura, for yourself, penalty in the second half, obviously, that Spain did get. Correct call, incorrect one. It took a long time as well. This was one where it just seemed to go on for ages, this one. Do you think it's the right decision or not on that one?
I always felt like I didn't know the rules well enough. Like, he clearly hit her hand. And it took a deflection down. So is the call whether that deflection down was deemed enough to disrupt Caldente in taking, like, it obviously put it more into her feet, so she couldn't take it in a stride as much, so maybe her ability to take a shot? Or was it just the fact that it did hit Kira Walsh's hand? Is that to do with like an unnatural position? Were they trying to work out whether it's in an unnatural position? Like, I just feel like I don't know the rules enough to be able to be like, oh, it was definitely a penalty or it definitely wasn't. My problem is that, yeah, it's like really subjective, but like, it's not, because there's black and white rules of either, like, I get it in the sense that, like, I think penalties are only subjective for me when it's like, oh, did they cause enough contact to bring them down? But if it's a handball, so it hits a hand, it's just like, I don't know, like, could she have avoided that? I almost think it probably was a penalty, because I do think it was slightly unnatural position. It did it did affect the flight of the ball. It did put him more into her feet. And I think you kind of see Kira Walsh, her hand's not like, I don't know, like, you can't expect her to have a hand like right by the side of her body, because that's just not natural. But it did kind of go, but I don't know whether that was in the motion of her bringing her knee up. I think it was a really, really tight call. I think it was a really harsh penalty, but I also would probably have wanted it had it been the other way around. I'm just glad it didn't really matter, but like, yeah, I feel like I need to know the rules better.
But I feel a bit like you, Laura, like every week watching, not just today or not just yesterday, even that's still annoying, but every week watching football, I feel like the rule surrounding what the handball is changes. and we've spoken about this before. My frustration today was birthed out of the fact that the fellas didn't get a penalty yesterday. That's what caused my frustration. So I turned around and said, that's not a penalty because it wasn't a penalty yesterday. And I think with football officiating, there is too much focus on intent. You don't know someone's intent. You don't know it. How can you possibly know it? You're not in their head. You don't know it. And there's too much room to create a grey area about what does a particular person a million miles away think that Kira Walsh meant by putting her hand there. Oh, well, she obviously meant that she was bringing her arm out because she was going to stop the attacker as a block. We don't know. We can't judge intent. And because they're trying to judge it on intent, it just makes a bit of a mockery of it. And they just need to decide, what is a handball? Make it really simple, and what is not. So everyone understands that if the ball hits one part of your body and then ricochets onto your hand, it's not a handball, unless it's United playing in the Europa League, then it is. If it hits one part of your body and then your hand, it's not a handball. That's fine, because that's really easy to spot if you're VAR, isn't it? Referee gives it, oh no, wait a minute, it's hit their back and then it's hit their arm, a la Brighton, which didn't go very well. Or, no, it's directly hit their hand. But there just needs to be something more straightforward. And then that might create situations where we're really close to them, but it doesn't matter. It just needs to be made much more simple. And what really annoyed me was it took 30 or 40 takes of that video for them to decide what they thought Kira Walsh's intention was. Okay. And again, if it's taking that long, is it a clear and obvious error? I don't think it is. But then happy on the 78th minute not to give a really easy decision, which is a player kicking the football away to give a second yellow card. That's what frustrates me. If you want it to be a handball, fine, it can be a handball. But there's just no consistency with that as a rule, and we've put in other rules into play. That's their job. Their job is to enforce the rules, and Barry, are ineffective at that.
I think the consistency is the big thing. You know, Dan, RP Field, who's on the men's channel with Barry, was saying this is the difference. FIFA and UEFA seem to be doing things a lot differently to the FA. Obviously, it's under different organisations and so on, and that's the big problem when you're looking at these kinds of things.
But imagine in rugby then, this new tackle height law that the international governing body going, we're not going to do that. We're going to still let them go this high. It's like, you don't have, in other sports, there aren't these randomly different approaches to how you would view something based on the governing body. There are rules so the players all know what's going on, because these players play in the leagues and they play internationally. It has to be consistent. It has to be. It really annoys me. I don't care whether it's handball or not. They just need to decide once and for all what a handball is. Forget that specific situation. What is a handball? What isn't?
Well, you lost me the minute you started bringing rugby into the conversation, because I have literally no
Connor
idea
knows
what
what I
you're talking
mean.
about. I'm no further forward with that particular explanation. But let me just help you out. Here are the rules. It's an offence if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, for example, moving the hand or arm towards the ball. And I think we'll all agree she definitely didn't do that. So it's a big cross next to that one. So then they'd go down to their next rule, which is scores in the opponent's goal. Well, it's not that one either, so we'll put a big cross next to that one, which means there's only one little bit left. Let's read that bit. It's an offence if a player touches the ball with their hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. The player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. By having their hand or arm in such a position, the player takes a risk of their hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalised. So that's the rule. Now, yesterday we watched on the men's channel whilst that exact thing happened. And that occasion, the hand is out here, ball hits the hand, no handball. Of course not. That's against Manchester United. Kira Walsh stands there with her hands by her side. And where else? When you're stood, Connor, where do you stand? Do you stand like this? Do you go walking around all the time like, hello, everybody, I'm Connor? No, you don't need to, because that's your hair. You don't need your hands making you any taller. It's an irrelevant thing. So we don't do that. So instead, she stood there with her hands down by her side, as most people do. You are literally meant to put your hands behind your back, which I would argue, unless you are Noel or Liam Gallagher, is an unnatural position to have your hands, if we're brutally honest. It's not the right place for it to go. By your side. It brushes her fingers, and the ball lands at her feet. They continue the attack, and then they sent the ball closer to the corner flag than the goal through an atrocious shot. And then they look back at it, and half an hour later they come back and go, oh, well, it did touch the hand. Yes, it did. But was it in an unnatural position? It absolutely bloody wasn't. I was screaming at that point. Equally because prior to that, Lauren Hemp got a yellow card, which was never in a million years a yellow card. She didn't even touch her until her trailing leg caught her. And then she rolls around. And Charlie, you said this. It's the first time I've really seen this in women's football for us. Rolling about as if she'd just been shot on the mount. It was absolutely unbelievable. And she bought a yellow card.
Yeah. Did you see was there one before as well? Was it Hemp or James that their shirt was just literally tugged back and as if nothing was given? So we're saying the Spain player didn't intend to grab her shirt and pull her back, so it's not a foul. And just even the first point on that handball, the player deliberately, no, that doesn't work now. Deliberately, you don't know what they deliberately, because that's when you create the situation where like, well, they're a nice player. They don't deliberately do those things normally. How do you know? Oh, that's a player. They do deliberately do those things. We've seen them do it before. It's just...
That's going to be to cover ones. Like we had one at Stevenage, right? And we're lucky because we used the GoPros and we got 2 handballs given against us, 2 penalties in our first game of the season. And the first one, the hand was here. Now, you could argue that's not unnatural. That's more unnatural because your hands have gone up and then it's just as it's gone up, hit the hand. You know, it's one of those where you would probably shout for it either side. The second one was a handball. Her hands were by her side, but the ball was kicked. She's moved, it's hit her hand, and then stopped the ball from going into the back of the net. If the hand hadn't been there, it would have been a goal. So 100% you're going to give a penalty for that, and it was a red card also. Couldn't argue with those. This is a ridiculous decision. It's brushed a hand. The hand hasn't moved towards it. It's not about there being a deliberate act or anything like that. It's not unnatural. Like, your hands have got to go somewhere. You know, you can't just, again, we're not at Hogwarts. You can't just go, oh, let's make the hands disappear when people take a shot. That's not how it works. There's got to be a level. And even the one against United from yesterday, I'll try to think to myself, if I'm going to go flying into a tackle to block a ball, where are my hands going to go? And they're not going to be behind my back, and they're not going to be down by my side. They probably would be up like that. So if you're not going to give that one against United, you don't give this one today, because where else is your hand supposed to be? And I'll tell you something, Connor. There are people about half a mile down the street who will be wondering whether or not it was Mary Earps who was swearing or whether it was me after that penalty, because I'll tell you something, that is the biggest amount of justice, moral justice, Carmen might say, some people, ever. Because that save was not just deserved, it was amazing. It was the best moment of the final. And that girl, sorry, probably get Joe on me now, cancelling me because I've decided to use David Beckham terminology, but that girl has absolutely nailed that final. And if there was one person who deserved a winner's medal today, it was Mary Alexandra Earps. She was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm hoping there's not even a player of the match poll today, Connor, because she's it. She's it. Player of the match, player of the tournament, player of the year, player of the century, Mary Earps. Her attitude and her behaviour, absolutely unreal. And actually, what Spain did really well after that penalty was then completely nullify the game, because where we had come so forward and we had all that adrenaline, they just ripped it out of us by cynically falling over and doing all of those sorts of things. But as you can see, I'm not upset about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said on the referee. Anton, I see a comment about Mary Earps was off her line. It really depends on the angle. And
there is an absolute still of it where the ball is. And oh, by the way, the penalty taken from 11 yards out, that was never on the spot. Like, they are taking the mickey as long as a little bit of the ball's touched.
The rule is lots of people think the rule is they need both feet on the line. No, they don't. When the ball is struck, they need part of a piece of one boot, either on the line or in line with the line, which must mean if they want, they can stand either side of the goal, I'm assuming, but they wouldn't do that for it. That's what it means.
True.
And I loved
And
it. I love the fact that we've gone to something else now. I love the fact that she didn't just save it; she kept it. Like, you rarely see that, do you? Like, she kept it in, and then obviously we all know the best bit was afterwards, where they were trying to celebrate, and she was just like, "Fuck off!" Like, that was it. My brother WhatsApped me, and he went, 'cause he's an Arsenal fan. Laurie, you're pleased to know. He WhatsApped me, and he said, "I love Mary Earps." He went, "She's keeper mental." I said, "What do you mean?" He went, "She's a keeper who loves being a goalkeeper more than anything else, and it makes her a bit mental. You know those bonkers keepers that just love it and it like sends them mad." He said that's what she's like. She's just brilliant. Absolutely incredible from her.
Awesome. And her foot was on the line. There was an absolute still photo that shows her foot on the line as the striker's foot hits the ball. So I ain't having that.
Yeah, it's, to be fair, the penalty itself was shocking. I know, obviously, I met a lot of people. It was a huge save, obviously, from us, but the penalty itself is absolutely awful. There's been some really poor penalties in this tournament as well. So, and not some, you don't really see that often from her either. And from penalty takers throughout this tournament, we've not really seen those kinds of penalties.
Would it have been shocking if Mary Earps had died the other way?
Yes. There's
So
no pace on it at all. It's not in the
It
court.
goes in.
No, don't. You cannot tell me that's a good penalty. Come on.
I'm telling you, it's a good save. Why is it always? They never seem to get any credit,
I'm not having
goalkeepers.
that.
It's always, oh, that's a poor penalty. It's only a poor penalty.
I just said it was a big save. I literally just said it's a big save, but it's not a good penalty.
It's a big save.
I'm sorry,
it's a
I'm
great
not having
save.
that.
It's not just a big save. It's a great save. She's done her own work. She's thought about it. She's won the mental battle. Can you just be nice about Mary for once in this World Cup?
Love Mary.
I'm not shifting
We
on
need
that.
to
It
make
wasn't
her
a
the
good
highest
penalty.
paid player at our club. ASAP.
I'd agree with that. But
ASAP.
a new arrival.
Sure, yeah, we've only got her for a year.
Yes, so be trying to tie her down to a new contract now, but highest paid, someone else might be nicking that one off her. But
Who?
she's rightly,
Who?
she can rightly demand. I'm not saying anything.
Oh,
I get. Oh no, I get accused of nicking info and all that kind
right,
of
when
shit. So I'm
this
not
is
saying a word.
finished, you're telling us you can't do that.
Whoever she is,
yeah.
I bet she's a keeper.
But Mary Earps is well within her rights to go in there, especially after the Golden Globe and everything else. Obviously, she's won from this tournament. In answer, there is a player of the match poll. Earps is going to win it. She's so far ahead. So yeah, I just stuck three other names on there just so we had four names.
Were those names
on the poll.
Robinson, Woodman, Moy, and Roma?
Can I ask a quick question? And this might, sorry, kind of this rains in your parade. Obviously, if England won today, right? If they'd won, does Bon Mati still get that award, or does it go to an English player? Who gets it? Do you think Earps gets it?
I think Earps gets it if England win it, especially after that penalty.
Or a
save.
centre back, an Earps or an Alex Greenwood maybe.
It'd be one of those two, wouldn't it? I'd have thought.
Yeah.
Because it usually does go to the winning. It's the same as the Ballon d'Or, isn't it? It's usually the Champions League winner or whoever's won the international.
Do you remember that FIFA World 11 that had no Barcelona players in? How many years ago was that? Do you remember when they won everything? Do you remember that? That was insane, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling, by the way, whoever you are, obviously I don't know your name, you're just coming up as new. I'm getting the feeling you're not an England fan, judging by some of the comments you've put in over the last half an hour, which is fair enough, and Spain can celebrate. You can, I don't know, it's what it is. Player of the match, then I may as well just end the poll because while we're on the topic of Mary Earps, we may as well speak about her. So, Laura, come to yourself first. I'm assuming, was she your player of the match as well? Or not?
Yeah, I don't think you can look past her. I thought Jess Carter had a pretty good game. She made some really important blocks. She'd be my other shout for today. But I think, you've got to give it to Mary Earps. She kept England in it. Like, there's no chance that without Mary Earps, you were looking at a 1-0. We're still in this after however long. We've still got a chance. A penalty save, even without that, like, there were so many saves throughout that match. And I think, as people have said, like, the mentality of Mary Earps and the way she organises that defence, just can't look beyond her for today. And the tournament as a whole, she was definitely the player of the tournament for England. That is, Bon Mati's, you can't, very, very good as well. But yeah, I kind of can't argue with Mary Earps.
Charlie, for yourself?
Yeah, I voted for Mary. I think she made so many incredible saves that Laura's right. It felt she kept us in it at times because there was little much else happening around. I think you're right about Jess Carter as well. I think when the formation change happened and she then went out on as left back, I think she did a really good job. I think she created a little bit more impetus on that side of the pitch, which was something we were missing. But also again, like, I wouldn't have begrudged anyone on the poll winning it today. I thought Hemp worked tirelessly, and Greenwood's been phenomenal all tournament. But yeah, I think today it has to go to Mary. She's like a mentality monster as well, isn't she? And you could hear her, like, that was a full stadium today, and you could still hear her through the television, just leading from the back, and Peter Schmeichel-esque, just telling everyone what they should be doing and keeping them in it. Just amazing. So good. I think is continuing to get even better, which is brilliant for us.
Anton makes a great point there with what he's just said about Mary making the reflex save as well. And he's spot on. Mary Earps was superb. I think, who were the other three you put on there? I jested about who it was, but who were the other three?
Greenwood, Hemp, and Carter.
Yeah, three very decent ones. They would have been the four that I would have put on there, 100%. I thought Carter did really well. Greenwood did really well. Really, really proud of her for getting up after getting that knee. And by the way, whilst we're on the talking of the referee as well, she watches that happen, looks at her, only gives the yellow card when she sees the blood. I think if there's no blood, she doesn't even give a yellow card. So I don't know what planet she was on. She just wasn't there. But thankfully, whatever planet she's on, it is owned and exclusively so by Mary Earps. It's her world, and we are all just living in it. It's amazing. 100% the player of the match.
Charlie agrees with you so much. He even went close up to nod her head then on the camera. Like,
Charlie always agrees with me.
High definition.
Agreeing with me, and that was about substitutions on the 60th minute. Other than that, we get them famously.
I wasn't saying you had to make substitutions on the 60th minute.
Oh,
that's
God.
Connor. I just said I think they should have made substitutions. I've got it written down somewhere in my notebook.
I mean, I'll bring it up and off she goes.
It'll be in your notes.
That's the worrying part. We've kept it so she can beat me up with it one day in the future.
Yeah.
Such a typical thing to do.
It'll be in your show notes somewhere from a previous one.
Yeah, it is. My black book, Barry.
Oh, God.
Outrageous.
Anthony, make a fair point. When your best player is the keeper, it says a lot. Obviously, United with David De Gea constantly winning player of the seasons. It says a lot about the rest of the team if your goalkeeper's the best player. That kind of moves me on to kind of a couple of, I guess, round-off questions from an England point of view, because obviously this is our last World Cup-y, well, England one in particular. So, Laura, I'll start with yourself. Who was England's best player this tournament? Not to put any pressure, I think it's probably between three I can think of.
Yeah, I can think of three. I think Mary Earps has got to be up there because of the impact she's had and because of how much she's kept England in it. I think Alex Greenwood has been consistent, and I don't think she's not kind of like this game Alex Greenwood is player of the match, but she's been like quietly just so consistent for England and really important in that back line. And you come into this tournament and you're thinking, we're without Leah Williamson, we're without the captain, we're without those crossfield balls and the approach play that Leah Williamson can kick off, and Greenwood comes in to fill that in. And I think I'd give it to Greenwood purely because I don't think she's got as much recognition, but I think she's been that steady presence in that England back line, which have had to weather quite a lot, and kind of kept us in it at times. I think for me between Greenwood and Earps and my maybe other three. I mean, I think all of the back three have done really well throughout the tournament. Carter's really impressed me coming into this tournament, and I think there's a shout for Hemp up front, but I think I'm going to go with Greenwood just because she's been so consistent throughout the tournament. Every single match she's put in a performance.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, for yourself, I said it's between 3. Highlane's got my 3. I think it's
Yeah.
between Earps, Greenwood, and Carter for me, anyway. But who was your player of the tournament from an England point of view?
I think it's still Mary Earps for me, player of the tournament. There might be a little bit of United bias there. It's not intentional. I think it's going to be pretty much rinse repeat, isn't it, as we go around the similar 3. I think Greenwood, having only been a bit part for England at the Euros, wanted more, and then unfortunately the opportunity arose because of what happened with Leah Williamson. But she's come in and she's done an incredible job both defensively and from an attacking point of view. A lot was built through her. Just unfortunately, it hasn't then paid off further up the pitch. And I think for Carter, I think I wonder if potentially going into this she wasn't a starter. That's kind of what I think. Is she was going to be a bit of a bit part player, but has had to come in with the change of formation and things like that, and has been much maligned. I think Jess Carter in the build up to the tournament, a bit like Mary was before the Euros, a bit of a why is she going and why is she in this position, blah blah blah. But she's come in and she's been incredible. She's done a really really good job. And your first proper taste of international football, because she didn't play in the Euros, was a bit of a baptism of fire having to come into that back line. That's a bit of a shake up. It's not what England would really wanted from their back line to begin with, personnel wise, and everything else that came with it. I think she's been brilliant, but I'm going to give it to Mary Earps, I think, this time for our player of the tournament overall.
Yeah, and Barry, for yourself?
Esme Morgan. Just kidding. She didn't play. So I think everybody's already touched on it, to be honest with you. I think Lauren Hemp had an exemplary tournament. She grew into it, but she wasn't really there too much at the beginning. I think Russo did okay. She scored a few. Ella Toon probably had one game that was really good. Lauren James was looking like she could have been the star of the tournament, but, sort of self-imploded a little bit there. It's a shame because I really hoped that she was going to have the quickest redemption arc of all sent off England players and sort of come on and do something. But unfortunately, her shot was saved, so that was unlucky. Kira Walsh, nowhere near. Georgia Stanway, nowhere near. Lucy Bruns, there was a point in the second half where she's racing forward, and for some reason she decided to have a shot rather than passing, and it was would have been brilliant if we were playing rugby, because that would have been right above the posts, but didn't happen. So it's amazing that I'm stood here saying to you now, having said everything I said on the pre-show about how our defence was probably going to be our weak link, that actually our defence has been our strongest link. I think Rachel Daly's done really well playing out of position. But 100%, it goes to either Earps, Carter, Bright, or Greenwood, which is quite something. Everybody's going to expect me to say Earps because this is a Man United channel. I'm a Man United fan. I will say well done to Jess Carter. I think she was absolutely superb. She gets a lot of stick, especially on the Man United channels. People thinking Hannah Blundell should be chosen above her. But you can't argue with her this tournament. She's been absolutely brilliant. Come into her own. Probably helped that she was playing alongside Millie Bright, who she plays alongside at club level. So it does keep that type of understanding going. Alex Greenwood's been comfortably one of the best defenders in the country for some years. But 100%, I said it a minute ago, Mary Earps, player of the season, player of the year, player of the tournament, just the best player, full stop. Because the fact that she's managed to keep 3 clean sheets with everything that's going on in front of her, absolutely amazing. So yeah, for me, we said she'd need to be the standout player. She was. She did everything right for her end. It's just the rest of the team weren't able to do their bit at the very last hurdle.
I was going to say that pre-tournament show we did obviously mention the back line. Obviously speaking about Earps being the MVP from an England point of view, and obviously she is in that conversation. I think I agree with what's been said. I said at the start of this, my 3 is between Greenwood, Carter, and Earps. I think, as you said, Carter gets a lot of stick. People don't rate her for whatever reason. I think she's had a really solid tournament. Greenwood, her passing ability is phenomenal, as we know, but also her defensive work has got, as we said all show, it's been massively tested this tournament. But Mary Earps, I think England probably don't get as far as they have done without her. You'd think of the saves in the group stages. If England drop a couple of points in the groups, we've got a whole different run then to the final. Maybe even don't even get out of the groups with some of the saves that she pulled off in the first couple of games. So, yeah, I'd probably give it to Earps off the base of that. But I think Carter and Greenwood are right up there with her from that point of view. And some good mentions, as you said, Hemp and Brighton and Daly out of position as well in the latter stages. When we went to the back five, I think people are mostly agreeing. Neil saying there, Hemp, Greenwood, and Earps. Dave's gone with Letitia. She did some brilliant. Mia, if she's still in the comments, obviously had a nice little chat with her earlier while watching the England game, which I'm really jealous about. But we move.
I'll never get over the fact she wasn't chosen. Kind of never.
She's saving it for the next one. She's going to win it in 2027. That's what it is. That was another comment I was going to get to. I mean, I don't think it did. However, I think it's a fair thing, maybe. Obviously, now post-tournament, there's going to be a lot of talk about that. I don't know why, though. I think everyone says it, when you're talking about why has the women's game got to be a stepping stone to the men's? Why can't Serena be at the top level of English football with the women's? Why does it have to be a stepping stone to the men's? I don't understand that. But maybe post-tournament, I think there'll be a lot of talk about that. All right, Mia, don't rub it in. I've sat next to her at the Ren outside LSV, Yeah, it's
Leah Galton, the best person Connor's the best person I've ever met. That hair has to be seen to be relieved.
Nobody wants to see this in person. I might shave it off or something before the start of the season. Fun fact: you will actually see me and Mia in Villa away, first WSL game of the season for the women. So you get to see my shiny hair in person here for something you'd like to look forward to. My final kind of question, I don't know where that was going. My final question, Laura, throw it back to yourself. Has this tournament been a success for England?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it doesn't feel like it today because we just watched them lose in the final. But I think I said I'd be happy with like a semi-final for England at the start of this tournament. Like we've made it to first major tournament final in like global world. That's the word for it. And we obviously made it to Euros last year. But I think absolutely, I think you get a week down the line from here and you look back and you think how well this squad has done. And people are going to say, I think we've seen in the comments like that they had an easy run or whatever. Like there isn't an easy run. It's a World Cup and those teams have deserved to be there on merit rather than anything else. So I think it can only be said that this tournament has been a success, and whilst today was a disappointment, this is far further than anyone would probably have predicted England to get, given the injuries that they came into with this tournament. The impact that it's had for women's football, that's a success in itself. Women's football in this country, like you look back and you see where people that support the women's game now have been inspired to watch it by, or when they started watching it. And so many times you hear and you read like started watching in 2015 because I got into the World Cup, started watching in 2019 because I got into the World Cup. How many more people now with the exposure that it's getting is that going to be the case for when started watching in 2023 because I watched the World Cup? Like this is really important, and the fact that England have done so well and have sustain that exposure. They go out the quarterfinals, the exposure is not the same. So I think from a women's football perspective, it's a success, and from a team perspective, this is a success. They've done really well and they've got to a final. It's almost like, do you win in a final? It's almost potluck once you get to that final. Like anything happens. It's a bit of a lottery of who survives it the best. Obviously, the best teams, of course, they win finals, but it's a you saw it like. I mean, men's Man City, they get to the Champions League final, they can't win it. But when you get to a final, it is a bit of a lottery. So I think we've done really well to be where we are today.
I just have a couple of comments to bring up on before we move on to the next one. Firstly, Mia, if I let it grow, it'll be horrendous by the time the 1st of October rolls around. So I will shorten it a little bit for you. And especially as that wasn't me, by the way, replying to you. That was, of course,
Wasn't
Barry.
me. Oh, was that you?
Not me.
Robin Redbreast sat in there.
I don't know what's going on there. And Jude, me and you are on the same wavelength. I've just said to Barry in our private chat, we had a discussion about this earlier on, and I promised that Jude is not my burner account. I'm assuming you're your own person, right, in those comments. But yes, I agree. I think teams outside of Europe do get overlooked massively because we don't see them more often than we do in Europe. But that's a whole other conversation. Charlie, for yourself, Was it a successful tournament for England?
Yeah, it was a successful tournament. We've talked about off pitch already, so how invested the country have been in England's performance, or how far they were getting. I think to get to the final with the injuries that we've had and the disruption we've had has been really impressive with the weight of expectation. I think it's dead, like somebody in the comments, it's dead easy to say, oh, that team's not very good, that's why they got this far. But you can bet that if we'd won today, people will be going, oh, it's only because of what's been going on with the Spain national team. That's the only reason they won. Like, there'll have been also an answer for that as well if England had won. But yeah, it's been massively successful for them. I think it's also been massively successful in general for women's football because we've been able to see the likes of teams like Colombia, Nigeria, Australia, those teams that we wouldn't normally perhaps see England playing against normally with Nations Leagues and things like that, to see how well they're coming along and how much better those sides are getting. It's only going to continue to get more difficult for England to be successful or to be competing at the top, which is a good thing in the long run, isn't it? That's what we want. We want a competitive women's football within our own leagues, but also internationally. But yeah, I think it's been really successful. They won a tournament last summer. They were European champions. They've come second to a very, very good Spain side, in spite of whatever else was going on. A very good Spain side. You basically got 2 starting 11s, like Chelsea Women's Football Club. They got 2 starting 11s. So it's been really good, and I'm excited to see what happens in 2 years' time.
No, it's a fair point. And I've got to be honest, this is the first comment of yours I actually agree with, because and maybe this is an English thing because I'm watching it in England, but I was getting a little bit annoyed myself watching Canada-Ireland earlier in the tournament, and all they were talking about was the Lionesses. I want to see the Canada-Irish game. I don't want to be talking about the Lionesses. So I do think there's a bit of that. Yeah, maybe that's because I'm watching it on British Network. They're going to be talking about the Lionesses more. But I do think there is a little bit of, not bias, but there's certainly a little bit of that towards it. But Barry, for yourself, obviously good points made by Charlie and Laura there. Do you think this has been a successful tournament for England?
Excellent points made by the pair of them. They should be hosting the show and probably take it over because they're so much more articulate than the rubbish we come out with, laughing at all the stuff that's going on. Absolutely. Throw them out. I love that. Keep it like that. I like this. This is nice. Oh, it's different to be down below. This is very interesting. So
you could say we're in Australia.
Imagine that, right down under. Shall I sort of just all the blood will rush to my head? Listen, I think. Oh, we're back up here again. Oh, it's lofty heights. I think it's not just been a success for England; it's a success for women's football. Full stop. And I'm here for it. I love it. I love what I'm seeing. It's just the engagement that's coming from people across the planet, and that people are starting to realise that this is such a technical game that still gets played, and that, I suppose, speaking from a male point of view, that people are dropping these pretenses of not being able to care or not being allowed to care just because it's women's football, and just understanding it's football, and that actually, as long as you get behind a group, regardless of who it's playing, even if it was like 11, I don't know, Foxes playing, it's irrelevant. As long as they're wearing your colours and you're supporting them and you're getting behind them. I would defy anybody to have not watched that World Cup final with anything other than anger at the referee, hope that we were still going to score, even though, when that 13 minutes went up, I'm like, oh, is that going to be unlucky for someone? It was unlucky for us. But you're just entirely invested. You see people on TikTok throwing things out there like, I understand now why it is that men get so emotional over football. It's widening. People are feeling emboldened to be able to come out and support football, and their opinions are being equally taken on board, and they should be. And it's just bloody fantastic to watch. We're talking about Colombia and Nigeria. This is Nigeria that we drew 0-0 with. Connor, before the tournament, 100% like me, would have thought we were going to bop them 7 or 8-0. People thought we were going to bop Haiti. We didn't. The only team we bopped was China. So I just think that in all of these respects, football is the winner. People are going to tell me today that Spain were the better side. They were, but I still admit they were only the better side because we didn't show up in the hole that we could have done. We were better than we showed today. It wasn't the best England. I think England at their best turn up, it's an entirely different game, and we would have seen more. So can we be proud? Absolutely, because this nation is a football nation, and they're getting up in the morning to watch matches that didn't matter to them, but yet they still wanted to watch it because they knew the entertainment was going to be good. People were setting alarms to do that. People are tweeting about it. People are loving it. And the voices that you see now on social media and everywhere are overwhelmingly positive. And let me be clear for anybody who's sat there going, oh, well, we don't have to watch it. No, you don't. And that's the entire point. But you also don't have to sit there and be an absolute pillock and tell everybody how you don't like it. You know, I don't like windsurfing, but you will not find a single tweet from me about how windsurfing is rubbish. And if I see it on my timeline, I'll just go past it because I'm an adult and I'm capable of doing such things. And I just think more people just need to do that. And it's wonderful. I'm honestly, my heart is full just for seeing how the beautiful game has become even more beautiful. And the fact that all of a sudden now we've got a World Cup that had 32 teams in that were just absolutely providing entertainment just beyond the pale. It was absolutely brilliant. So do you know what? It's bigger than just the Lionesses. It really is on this occasion. But it started with the Lionesses, and everything that we're seeing from the WNL to the regional football at grassroots, which I spend a lot of time in, we're seeing these grow, and it's all happening because of the absolute brilliance of the last couple of years. So however disappointed I am and however angry I am at certain things will always be overtaken by the fact that Serena Wiegman and the Lionesses have just lifted football in this country to a complete different level. And with everything that's going on in men's football at the moment, and with everything that's going on even at our own club, I'm telling you now, the feeling for me, women's football's taken over because I would genuinely rather sit and watch women's football than spend a minute on the Premier League, because they are just pampered, overblown, overpaid, over egotistical, to kind of get the word out, egotistical fools. Whereas you just don't get that with women, because even though Spain absolutely played the game towards the end there with rolling about and doing everything they did, they still did it in a way that made you go, we'd have done that. It wasn't outrageous. So am I proud? Like a proud father.
I've got literally nothing to add on that. I think you've hit every nail on the head. You know, even someone like myself, I think, you know, Barry, you made a little point of it in one of our group chats earlier that, you know, where is this Connor that wasn't interested in international football? I wasn't. You know, but this tournament has really kind of gripped me on this, particularly from an England point of view. And it was sad at the end, you know, especially. By the way, BBC, can we not have zooming in on players crying at full time? Can we not do that again? Because that was not nice to watch, especially when it's the United players. I don't want to be seeing that again. I had enough of that at the FA Cup when I decided to rewatch the FA Cup final. I decided to rewatch that afterwards, so I don't want to be seeing that again. Some of the comments saying, obviously, this is our last kind of Lionesses World Cup show. I have to shout out, absolute legend, by the way. Always watches the shows. Always, you know, supporting the channel, retweeting our stuff, interacting with us on Twitter. So thank you, obviously, for your first official comment that I brought on screen. Obviously saying I just want to thank you on this channel for making the World Cup more enjoyable. We've done our best. We've done World Cup wraps. We've done Lioness shows. We've had, I don't actually know how many people we've had on, but so many different people have come on throughout this tournament, and it's certainly been enjoyable. We found Laura. You know, Laura's been on the channel 8 consecutive... Or 9, I think 9 or 10. You must be up to now because you came on some of the World Cup rap ones as well. So, yeah, you must be on a few now.
That's mini Rux. Just imagine what Mega Rux account is going to be like. She must be even more proud of us.
Had to get a joke in there, didn't you? Of course. That's what we do. That's what we do on the channel. So, no, really appreciate all your support and everything else. As for everyone in the comments as well, I can see, you know, Neil and Paul, Mia, Dave and Ross and so on. It's been another brilliant show on that one. And yeah, I agree with me. I think it has been one of the best tournaments. Yeah, worth watching. Obviously, when you compare it to 2019 one to now, it's pretty incredible to see where it's growing to. Right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Laura, where can people? I'm assuming your Twitter at still there. You've not changed it or anything like that.
No,
obviously, it's not a goodbye from the channel. We're going to get you back on because, you know, you've obviously been a brilliant addition to the channel over the summer. We're not going to let you go and run off, albeit being an Arsenal fan. We will definitely be having you back.
Might not want me on.
To be fair, Connor, we've talked about from the brink, because I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning of the show, the light was just around her. She was ready to go to the light, and the light has diminished somewhat. So that's good.
Starting the dark now.
from all that, and she's back with us.
But is there anything else you want to shout out, Laura, while you're on here?
Everything will be on the Twitter. I've not got anything particular to shout out right now, but yeah, just follow that, and that's where I'll be.
Nice. So make sure you're doing that. Obviously, watch along next. What's the Olympics next year, and it's on the European time zone because it's in Paris, isn't it? So yes, we will see on that one. And that's a great comment over here as well. I discovered it through the JC show. Obviously, went out yesterday. We've got a couple more on the horizon that are actually sat on the YouTube dashboard right now, waiting for United's official announcement. So
disappointed about this announcement. I said to you, didn't I? Like, I can't call her Jay-Z anymore because she's told us how to pronounce her name, and it's just Jay's. I'm like, what do I do with that?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for watching the show, by the way, and welcome to the channel. Yeah, we might disagree and things like that as we have done throughout, but really appreciate all your comments and everything else. So we will be next back. There's a special going out either tomorrow or Tuesday. Barry and Charlie have got no idea this is going out, by the way. There's a special going out on one of those 2 days. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to put it out yet. Mainly because I've not recorded it. I'm recording it tomorrow morning. But it's going out either tomorrow afternoon or Tuesday afternoon. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Obviously, it is United related, United transfer
I was
related.
going to say, what's so special about it? Has it been filmed in like Ultra 4K HD or something?
It's obviously United women transfer related, so keep an eye on that one. We've got some obviously more player profile special and things like that to release once players are signed. And yeah, it's on to United pre-season now. Hopefully, when we finally get the fixture drop on that one, we'll be having some potential watch-alongs and things like that. If obviously we can't get to the games if they're behind closed doors and streamed like we did last year, and things like that. So yeah, thank you everyone in the comments. Thanks for these three, obviously, for joining us. It's been a sad old morning, but as Barry rightly said at the end, someone needs to clip that up and get that tweeted out a little bit later on, because that was summed up, I think, how this World Cup has been. Make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, all of that stuff, and we shall see you guys in the next one.